I was sitting on the living room floor with a barely warmed toaster strudel on a chipped plate and a glass of cold grape tang, still wearing my faded E.T. pajamas, the one with Elliot and E.T. flying on the bike. Remember that? It was just another Monday morning in March of '84, but you could already feel in the air that the day wasn't gonna end like the others. The old Zenith console TV, one of those with the fake wood paneling and the clunky channel knobs, was humming quietly on Channel 9. Romper Room was on, and I swore that lady was finally gonna say my name at the end. But she never did. Not once. Grandpa was there too, standing by the TV with that surgical focus he got when things didn't go his way. He was trying to clean the inside of our beloved Sanyo BetaMax, one of those chunky black ones with the green digital clock on the front, using a toothpick like he was defusing a bomb. He was wearing his usual slippers and that navy blue robe he said he wanted a VFW bingo night in Trenton, and of course, muttering under his breath. The tape we were trying to watch was an old recording of Solid Gold with Hall & Oates doing Out of Touch, but the damn thing got jammed halfway through. And when that happened, Grandpa turned into some kind of senior citizen Hulk, vein popping on his forehead and everything. "These Japanese gizmos are built to break, I swear," he growled, poking at the tape slot with an unbent paperclip. Outside, the morning light filtered through our yellowed lace curtains with faded tulip prints. The street was quiet, just the occasional slow cruise of a '79 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, with Van Halen's Jump blasting from the radio. Life in the Jersey suburbs had that slow, syrupy feel, like an old Woolworth's ad come to life. It smelled like toasted Wonder Bread, wood varnish, and whatever Avon perfume Grandma had dabbed on that morning, the kind that came in a little glass bunny or Christmas bell. From the kitchen came the sizzle of Spam frying in the cast-iron skillet. Mom shouted over the noise, "You want eggs or box pancakes, hun?" without even glancing away from the little portable TV on the counter playing a rerun of Donahue. That was our morning ritual. Spam breakfast, political debates between Mom and Grandpa, and me trying not to spill syrup on our green Formica table. Around mid-morning, my little brother Randy came barreling into the room in his satin Raiders jacket and those flashy LA Gear sneakers that lit up when he ran. "Atari time," he yelled like we didn't do that every single day after breakfast. The Atari 2600 was sitting on the floor, stacked on an old chessboard with all the cartridges stuffed into a Kinney Shoes box. We still fought over Pitfall and Yar's Revenge, even though he swore Frogger was dumb, which, frankly, was blasphemy. But Atari would have to wait that day, because the main mission was saving that BetaMax tape. It wasn't just any tape. It was one I recorded with my dad back in January. He died 3 weeks later, so that thing was like a time capsule. There he was in the background, dancing to Owner of a Lonely Heart, holding a glass of Pepsi Free, wearing an Ocean Pacific t-shirt tied around his waist. And now that tape was stuck, trapped in a machine that felt like it was choking on the past. Funny thing is, Grandpa hated that BetaMax from day one. He always said, "VHS is gonna win, you'll see," and complained we should have bought the RCA model that Mr. Mancini had down the block. "This one looks like some kind of spaceship or one of those Sears washers from '72, he'd say. But deep down, we all knew it was just an act. He loved watching Mash and the Love Boat with us on Sunday afternoons. I still remember how he'd chuckle when Isaac the bartender gave one of his knowing looks. It was the only time Grandpa ever really let himself laugh. As the tension around that jammed tape grew thicker, Grandpa started making threats. "If this hunk of junk ain't working by lunch, it's going in the trash, you hear me?" I heard him, and my heart just sank. "So let me ask you, did you have a machine like that too? One that felt like magic when it worked but turned on you the minute it mattered? Ever have to stick a pencil in the cassette hole to rewind because the auto rewinder died on you? Or blow into the Atari cartridge like that would somehow fix everything?" I swear that BetaMax had a mind of its own, like it knew how much that tape meant. Grandpa finally gave up trying to fish the tape out with his toothpick and marched off muttering something about getting the damn toolbox. I stayed there, just me and the blinking green digits of the BetaMax, like it was mocking me, stuck on 0 I gently pressed eject again, like maybe, just maybe, the machine had changed its mind. But all it did was make that tired mechanical whir, then click, and nothing. I could hear Grandma in the next room, humming along to the end of a Casey Kasem Top 40 countdown that was playing faintly on her old tabletop AM/FM radio in the kitchen, the one with the cracked dial and those weird brown buttons you had to jab just right or you'd end up on a gospel station. "Lionel Richie's at number 2 again," she called out like it was breaking news. "That boy's always at number 2. By now it was about 10:30 a.m. and the house had that mid-morning energy. Sunlight pouring in through the storm door, the faint scent of pine sol and coffee grounds, and a random patch of Wheel of Fortune echoing from a neighbor's open window across the street. We lived in one of those neighborhoods where all the front lawns were slightly uneven, and half the mailboxes leaned like they'd just given up. If you stood outside long enough, you'd see at least one kid skating down the sidewalk in those clunky metal strap-on roller skates with the key dangling from their neck, usually trying not to fall into a pile of raked leaves someone forgot to bag up. I got up off the carpet, our scratchy olive green one that felt like steel wool if you wore shorts, and walked over to the coat closet where Grandpa kept his tools, in a brown and yellow toolbox from Montgomery Ward. He never let me touch it. Said tools are like soldiers, they obey one master. But today I needed a screwdriver to open the bottom panel of that damn machine. I figured I could peek inside and maybe nudge the tape back into place. As I was digging around, Randy came back with a handful of Bonkers candy, those chewy fruity squares that made your jaw ache, and sat down cross-legged beside the BetaMax like he was waiting for a surgery to begin. "Think it's dead?" he asked, popping a grape Bonkers into his mouth. "Not yet," I said, with the kind of determination only a 12-year-old can muster. I finally found a flathead and unscrewed the panel, feeling like a mini MacGyver, except without the mullet. I was careful, real careful, not to touch anything that looked like it might zap me. The guts of that thing looked like something from Knight Rider, little wires and belts and rollers that all seemed way too complex for a machine that only had 3 buttons you ever used. And then, I saw it. The tape was bent. The ribbon had looped around one of the rollers and was twisted like someone wrung it out like a wet towel. My heart just sank. That was the part where Dad waved at the camera and said, "Don't tape over this one, buddy." His voice. I could still hear it just thinking about it. I swallowed the lump in my throat and called out, "Grandpa, I think I can fix it." But Grandpa had already given up. He was back in the kitchen drinking Sanka from his favorite mug, the white one with the American flag and Reagan Bush 84 printed on the side. He just shook his head and said, "We'll just buy a VHS next time. They're cheaper at Kmart now anyway." That was like a stab to the chest. We were a BetaMax family. Always had been. We were the weird ones, the holdouts, the folks who swore the picture quality was better. And now even Grandpa was jumping ship? I went back to work on the tape, this time with a pair of tweezers from Grandma's sewing kit. Carefully, I unlooped the twisted ribbon and tried to wind it back in place. Randy was still sitting there, licking orange powder off his fingers from a bag of Planters cheese balls, giving me the play-by-play like it was a sports game. "He's going in for the extraction. And he's done it, folks. The patient lives." "Shut up," I muttered, but I couldn't help grinning a little. That's when the phone rang. The wall phone in the kitchen, avocado green, with the 6-foot cord that was always tangled no matter what you did. Grandma answered, said a few mm-hms, and then handed the phone to Grandpa. It was his friend Gus, the one who used to own the TV repair shop down on Main Street, before the mall killed half the businesses downtown. "Tell Gus to come over," I shouted. "He knows BetaMax." Grandpa ignored me. Yeah, the tape's stuck again. Probably time to toss the thing." And just like that, I felt the earth tilt. Toss it? This was the same machine we used to record every Friday night episode of Dallas, every holiday special from the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving to a Claymation Christmas. We even had that one tape with a 3-hour block of Saturday morning cartoons from '82. Jem, Thundar the Barbarian, Shirt Tales, and those weird PSAs in between. You don't just toss memories like that. But that was Grandpa. Once he made up his mind, there was no turning back, and I could already see it. The BetaMax sitting on top of the trash bin at the end of the driveway, right next to the broken garden hose and the box of old Reader's Digest back issues. It was just a matter of time. So I doubled down. I took the tape, wound the ribbon back inside, flattened it out between 2 TV guides, and prayed to the gods of analog that it would at least play long enough for that one scene. Dad dancing with a plastic microphone, lip-syncing to Yes, while the Christmas lights blinked behind him. I knew I had one last shot. And I gotta ask, did you ever fight to save something no one else seemed to care about? Something small, dumb maybe, but full of everything that mattered to you? A toy, a tape, a pair of shoes even? Something that said, "This is who we were. Don't forget." I waited until Grandpa went outside to check on the gutter or yell at the neighbor's dog, one of those things he did mid-morning when the world started to annoy him. That gave me a few sacred minutes alone with the machine. I gently slid the slightly crinkled tape back into the BetaMax. The ribbon wasn't perfect, but it looked good enough to run through without snapping. I held my breath, hit play, and heard the soft click of the mechanism engaging. The screen flickered. Static, then a shaky image. For a second I thought I saw it. Our living room from last Christmas. My dad's voice. But then, "We're Kurt." The machine made this god-awful grinding sound and the image disappeared into a warped blur of gray lines and snow. The audio cracked, the ribbon snagged again, and the screen went blue. Just blue. I froze. "No," I whispered. I hit stop. Nothing. Hit eject. Nothing. The tape was jammed all over again. That's when Grandpa came back in, holding a broken garden gnome in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. His eyes darted to the BetaMax. "Did you mess with it again?" "I almost had it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He stomped over, looked at the tape slot like it had personally insulted him, and without a second of hesitation, he yanked the power cord from the wall. "That's it. I've had enough of this piece of crap. It's done." He bent down, grabbed the whole machine from the bottom and lifted it with both hands. You ever see an old man carry 20 pounds of technology like he's about to toss it into the ocean? That was Grandpa in that moment, still in his slippers, still wearing that fraying robe like it was a cape. I yelled, "Wait, Grandpa, please. There's stuff on that tape. There's Dad." But it was too late. He marched straight through the living room, out the screen door, and onto the porch. I followed him like a little soldier in pajamas, trying to hold back tears. I didn't care if the whole neighborhood saw me. At that point, I'd have tackled him in the bushes if it meant saving that tape. He got to the curb, where the trash was already waiting. A split vinyl recliner, a box of old Popular Mechanics, a pair of rusted Tonka trucks from when I was 5. And right on top, he dropped the BetaMax with a grunt. It hit the metal trash can with a clang that still echoes in my memory. "There," he said, brushing his hands off. "Good riddance." I just stood there, stunned. A part of me wanted to dive into that garbage like some kind of cinematic hero, rescue the tape and run off into the sunrise. But I couldn't move. I just stared at it, our history, our laughs, our goofy dance moves, all sitting there like it never mattered. "Come on in," he said. "It's just a machine." But it wasn't. It never was. Back inside, the house felt off, like something had shifted. Grandma was folding laundry on the couch, humming the melody to Islands in the Stream without realizing it. Randy was sitting cross-legged again, trying to beat his high score in Missile Command. And Mom was now in the backyard on the rotary clothesline, hanging out bedsheets that would smell like wind and sun by dinner time. I sat at the dining room table, not even hungry anymore, pushing around the last of my scrambled eggs with a fork that had a melted plastic handle. That's when the phone rang again. Same green wall phone, same tangled cord. This time, Grandma answered and said, "It's for you, sweetie." "Me?" It was my best friend Darren. "Dude, bring your Walkman and let's ride to the mall. KB Toys has that new mask action figure set in stock." I almost said no. I almost said I couldn't go anywhere today, that I'd lost something huge, something no one else seemed to get. But then I looked at the clock. 11:42 a.m. There was still time. I grabbed my denim jacket, the one with all the buttons on the collar. I Heart Pac-Man, I survived the blizzard of '83, and a faded Knight Rider Rules badge. Slid my Walkman onto my belt, popped in a mixtape Darren made with Journey and Huey Lewis, and stepped out the door. But before I left, I looked back at the trash can. The BetaMax was still sitting there, unmoving, like a monument to everything analog and fragile and beautiful. I thought of grabbing the tape at least, but Grandpa must have taken it out before he threw the machine. I didn't see it anywhere. So I walked. The sun was brighter than usual. The air had that spring buzz to it, the one that makes the whole street smell like cut grass, distant grills, and dusty asphalt. My bike was leaning against the garage, its banana seat still wrapped in cracked vinyl. I hopped on and started pedaling toward Darren's house. But I kept thinking, was that really it? Was it gone for good? I mean, do you remember what it felt like to lose something that wasn't just a thing? Something that held a whole piece of your story? Like your grandpa's laugh, your dad's off-key singing, the way your living room looked before the wallpaper peeled or the carpet got replaced. Because that day, that stupid Blue Monday in March, it felt like all of that got tossed out too. I made it to Darren's place in about 10 minutes. He lived 3 blocks over, in one of those split-level houses with the wood paneling on the bottom half and white siding up top. His mom was out front watering the petunias in curlers and a Mickey Mouse sweatshirt from Disney World '82. She waved at me with her cigarette hand like she always did and yelled, "You boys stay out of trouble now," as if we were planning a heist and not just a trip to the damn mall. Darren was already in the driveway, fiddling with the gear shifter on his silver Schwinn with the red grips. He had that look in his eye, half mischief, half mission. "I called earlier," he said. "They said they just put the new Mask Boulder Hill playset out. I got birthday money. Let's go." We rode fast, cutting through the neighborhood shortcut behind the middle school, where the cracked pavement was littered with old gum wads and chalk drawings that were half melted from the morning dew. I had my Walkman on, the foam headphones slightly crooked, playing Separate Ways by Journey, and the wind hitting my face made everything feel like one of those music video dream sequences they do on Fame or Square Pegs. By the time we reached the mall, Voorhees Town Center back when it was still Echelon Mall, we were sweaty and out of breath. The kind of breathless that only came from riding hard, jumping curbs, and narrowly avoiding Mr. Hendricks and his big brown Buick who never looked before backing out. The second we stepped through the sliding glass doors, it hit us. The blast of cold air conditioning, the smell of buttery pretzels from Hot Sam, and that faint mix of Claire's perfume, and whatever the heck they used to mop the food court floors. The tiled fountain was still there in the middle of the atrium, bubbling away beneath that giant hanging sculpture made of chrome rings and colored glass that turned with the air currents. We didn't waste time. Straight to KB Toys, past B. Dalton Bookseller, Chess King, and that weird rug kiosk that always had tiger print everything. KB was packed. A bunch of kids were huddled around the new Transformers display near the entrance, but Darren and I beelined to the back wall where the mask stuff usually lived. Beneath the G.I. Joes, but above the leftover Black Hole and Buck Rogers figures no one bought anymore. And there it was, Boulder Hill, the Holy Grail. The box was huge, glorious, bright blue with that unmistakable mask logo in red, and the hill turning into a secret military base, just like in the cartoon. We stood there, mouths open, as if we'd just seen the Ark of the Covenant. Darren grabbed the box like he was rescuing a baby from a fire. "I'm getting it," he said, chest puffed up like a game show winner. I smiled, but I'll admit, part of me felt hollow. Not because I didn't have birthday money or because I couldn't afford a toy, but because all I could think about, standing there in the back of that store, surrounded by neon packaging and the beep-beep of price scanners, was my dad on that tape, that machine on the curb, how we used to come to this very mall together, how we always got a soft pretzel with yellow mustard, then played the Star Wars pinball machine in the arcade by the food court. He once spent $6 in quarters just to show me he could beat the high score. I could still hear him saying, "Watch this move, sport," every time he pulled the plunger. I wandered toward the front of the store, trying to shake the memory off. A kid about my age was there, asking his mom if he could buy a high-C Ecto cooler from the fridge by the counter. I smiled. That weird citrus slime drink was everywhere now. I grabbed a pack of Garbage Pail Kids and walked up to the checkout just to feel normal. Darren was still in line, cradling Boulder Hill like it was a newborn. I told him I'd wait outside. Back in the mall corridor, I sat by the fountain, watched the way the water trickled down the sides, splashing onto the tiles like it was choreographed. Overhead, Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper played on the mall speakers, echoing soft and sad across the food court. Time after time. I closed my eyes. The image of my dad waving at the camera came rushing back, him spinning with that dumb inflatable guitar, the blinking Christmas lights, my little brother laughing in the background, covered in glitter and wrapping paper. And then, a crazy thought hit me. What if the tape wasn't gone? What if Grandpa, in all his stubbornness, had just chucked the machine, and not the tape? What if, by some miracle, that piece of magnetic ribbon was still somewhere in the house? Or maybe he tossed it into the sewing drawer, or the garage, somewhere he thought I wouldn't look. And just like that, I jumped up. "Darren, I gotta go." He looked confused. "What? Why?" "We were gonna hit Orange Julius and check the arcade." "I'll come back later, I swear," I said, already backing away. "You okay, man?" "Yeah," I said, my heart pounding. I just remembered something important. I pedaled back home like my life depended on it. Wind in my face, tires skidding over sidewalk cracks, heart pounding with that weird mix of hope and panic. My Walkman had stopped playing somewhere between the mall and the shortcut. I think the AA batteries finally gave up, but I didn't care. I wasn't hearing music anymore. I was hearing Dad, laughing, talking, alive. I skidded into our driveway, hopped off the bike before it even stopped, and ran inside. The house smelled like lunch now. Grandma had probably reheated the meatloaf from the night before and paired it with her famous Jell-O salad, the one with the marshmallows floating in a sea of lime green. But I didn't stop to check. "Grandpa!" I shouted, already halfway to the den. "What did you do with the tape? The one that jammed?" He was at the kitchen table, poking at a crust of rye bread, glasses perched low on his nose. The newspaper folded to the TV guide section. "It's gone," he said flatly. "Told you I tossed the machine." "But the tape," I said, out of breath. "The tape. Did you throw that away too?" He looked up, paused. Then, without even blinking, he said, "It's in the garage, on the shelf above the paint cans." I pulled it out before the whole thing locked up again. I stared at him. "You what? Thought you might want it," he muttered, going back to his newspaper. I didn't wait for more. I ran out the back door through the overgrown patch of crabgrass and into the garage. Dust particles danced in the sunlight, slicing through the grimy window, and everything smelled like motor oil, old tennis shoes, and whatever scent came from the pile of National Geographic stacked in the corner since 1975. And there it was, sitting right next to a rusted can of paint thinner and an old Coleco handheld football game. The tape. My tape. The label still said Xmas 83 don't erase in my chicken scratch handwriting. I held it like it was glass, like it was a living thing. But now came the hard part. The BetaMax was dead, buried, out with Tuesday morning's trash, and nobody in the neighborhood still had one except maybe Mr. Mancini. Mr. Mancini across the street, the VHS guy, the one Grandpa swore had made the wrong choice. Until today, I guess. I sprinted across the street, dodging the plastic big wheel left in the sidewalk, and rang the Mancini's doorbell like I was alerting them to a fire. Mrs. Mancini answered, her hair in curlers, eyes half-lidded with afternoon TV malaise. "Well, hi there, sweetie. You okay? Do you guys still have your BetaMax?" She blinked. "You mean the old player Frank got from JCPenney in '81? The one that weighs 100 pounds? Yes. Do you still have it?" She opened the door wider. "It's in the basement, still hooked up to the old Magnavox. Why?" "I need to play something, just once." She looked me over, saw the desperation in my face, and nodded. "All right, come in. But don't mess up my shag carpet." I bolted downstairs, tape in hand, through the haze of lemon-scented Pledge and the humming of their dehumidifier. The basement was like a time capsule. Wood-paneled walls, a record player with a stack of Barry Manilow albums, and the faint hum of reruns playing on the tube TV in the corner. And there it was, the player, dusty, heavy, glorious. I popped in the tape, hit play. For a moment, nothing. Then a burst of static. Then, life. My dad appeared on screen, waving at the camera, laughing, wearing that ridiculous red "Where's the Beef" t-shirt he got from Wendy's. Randy was dancing behind him with wrapping paper on his head. The tree lights blinked. My mom yelled from the kitchen, and my dad turned toward the lens and said, "Hey, buddy, Merry Christmas. Don't tape over this one." I sat down on the shag carpet, knees to my chest, and just let it wash over me. Every sound, every flicker, every second of it. Tears welled up, but I didn't wipe them away. Mrs. Mancini peeked down the stairs. "You okay down there, honey?" I nodded, eyes glued to the screen. "Yeah," I whispered. "I'm okay now." I watched the whole thing, start to finish, twice. When it was over, I hit stop, rewound it gently, holding the player with both hands like it might break, and thanked her about a dozen times before heading back home. Grandpa was on the porch smoking his after-lunch cigar, watching the world like it owed him answers. I walked up and stood next to him. "I saw it," I said. He nodded, didn't look at me, just puffed once and said, "Good. I knew you'd figure it out." And then he added, "Don't forget to label it again. Properly this time." That night after dinner, after Randy fell asleep with a Hostess cupcake still in his hand, I sat alone in the den with the rescued tape. I put a new label on it, neat and careful, Dad, Christmas '83, do not touch. Then I slid it into a Tupperware container, wrapped it in an old Garfield pillowcase, and tucked it into the bottom drawer of my desk, like a time capsule, like treasure, because that's what it was. That's what it'll always be. Later that night, long after the house had gone quiet, Grandma asleep in her recliner with Murder, She Wrote, playing softly in the background, Mom folding laundry to the glow of a lava lamp in the kitchen, Randy passed out across his Star Wars bedspread. I laid there in bed staring up at the ceiling, thinking about everything that happened. The day had started with toaster pastries and cartoons, and ended with a memory rescued from the edge of oblivion. I could still smell the faint scent of Grandpa's cigar smoke drifting in from the porch, mixing with the after-dinner aromas of pot roast and his knockoff root beer he always poured into a glass mug like it was beer. My room was dim, the only light coming from the glowing green dial of my old alarm clock radio, the one with the analog knobs and that soft ticking sound that always lulled me to sleep. But I couldn't sleep. Instead, I thought about Dad, about the way he laughed when something truly got him, like a belly laugh that took over his whole body, the way he always made our Christmases feel like magic, even when we barely had enough for presents. He made things feel bigger than they were, every little thing, even the dumb stuff, especially the dumb stuff, like recording a song on a cheap BetaMax tape just to lip sync and dance around the living room for us. That tape, it was more than a recording. It was proof that he was here, that he was. We didn't have iClouds or USBs or Google Photos back then. Our memories lived on tape, on paper, on scraps of film and yellow Kodak envelopes you picked up at the drugstore. One wrong move, one jammed tape, and poof, it was all gone. We lived closer to the edge back then, didn't we? Even now, all these years later, I remember the weight of that BetaMax. The clunk when you pushed eject. The way the machine warmed up with that faint humming sound. How Grandpa used to say it felt like operating a mini microwave. I remember the static on the screen, the flicker of tracking lines, the struggle to get the antenna just right with a bit of tin foil and faith. And I remember what it meant to sit together on the couch, a bowl of Jiffy Pop between us, watching some taped episode of Knight Rider or the A-Team, rewinding every time Mr. T said something hilarious or Kit jumped through fire. It wasn't just about what we watched, it was about who we watched it with. You know what I mean? Nowadays, everything's on demand, streaming, stored in clouds you can't touch. But back then, when you had a tape, when you made a tape, it meant something. It meant you were there. That moment existed, and you could hold it, rewind it, replay it again and again, until the tape wore thin. I never did tell Grandpa what was really on that cassette when I begged him not to throw the machine away. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe I didn't want to see what would happen if he didn't care. But when he saved the tape without saying a word, that was his way of caring. He never said much, but he knew. He always knew more than he let on. And that night, sitting in silence on the porch, puffing his cigar like it was a ritual, I realized that. The next morning, I woke up to find a new label on the kitchen counter, one of Grandpa's, written in his slanted, shaky handwriting, Christmas tape, important, keep. It was taped to a Ziploc bag, and inside the bag was the same BetaMax cassette I'd hidden in my drawer. He'd gone in, found it, and sealed it up, just in case we ever needed to remember. So yeah, March 19th, 1984, the day my grandpa threw away the BetaMax, but also the day he didn't, because what mattered survived. And if you ever had a tape like that, a cassette, a camcorder reel, a Polaroid stuck to your fridge with a Garfield magnet, you know exactly what I mean. Some things aren't meant to last forever, but they stay, right here, right where we keep the best parts of ourselves.